philosophy,
Mm. Mhm.
Buddha, um, has a quote like suffering is the root, sorry, desire is the root of all suffering. And
Mhm.
I think it's
Mhm.
very easy
Mhm.
to exchange the word desire with expectation, right? If you
Mhm.
expect something, it's a desired outcome. So you could say
Mhm.
expectation is the root of all
Yeah.
suffering. And then if you actually analyze that, it's like, yeah, my expectation was to sell the company for this amount and I didn't hit it, or I did. But either way, because of that expectation, it's going to set me up for a potential suffering. Whereas through LinkedIn, that was probably my number one. After I exhausted my friends and family network, LinkedIn was the number one spot to just find investors,
Mm.
connect with people, and
Yeah.
then connected with this guy. I asked him to become an advisor. He was the former Jimmy John CEO. He
Mm.
served as an advisor for about a year, then came on as CEO last year, or about a year ago, December, 12 months ago, and then he bought the company in September. So same thing. It was me trying to cold outreach in LinkedIn. He didn't
Mm.
want to invest, but I got him on as advisor. And then as he got to know the company more, he became CEO and then ended up buying it. But yeah, the investment capital, it wasn't like a $9 million check that came in. Like I was saying,
Mm. Mhm.
it was, if you don't raise money, we're going to run out of money next month, always, or 2 months or 3 months. We're never that far out. So it wasn't like getting a big chunk in and making a big investment. It was, here's our expenses. How do we get by with just these things?
Cover this month.
But yeah, most.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone to another episode of Define Your Purpose. And purpose is the birthplace of ideas. And today I am really looking forward to my conversation with someone who has been on the forefront of ideas for a long time with his company out of Pleasant Grove, Utah. Please welcome Mr. Bennett Maxwell. Bennett, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Karl. I'm super excited to be here.
So, I'm really probably like a lot of people that you meet with a big successful company like yours. I'm interested to hear how you got into it and how you got started and all.
Yeah, Dirty Dough Cookies.
Yeah.
That's the most recent company. And Crumble was blowing up. Most people probably heard about Crumble. They've been probably the hottest restaurant brand in the last, I don't know, 50 years. First one to reach 100 locations. So there's
Mm.
just a lot of hype in the cookie
Mhm.
space.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I saw that Crumble had a pretty cool model. They were
Mm.
crushing it, but they required owner operated, meaning like if I wanted to buy a franchise in Utah, they were sold out of Utah. So I'd have to move out of the state to go buy my own job. So that's kind of where the opportunity saw when I was looking into Crumble a little bit. And then Dirty Dough was a little brother's friend posted on Facebook. Hey, I'm serving gourmet cookies out of my apartment. I sell out almost every night. I'm looking for an investor to open
Mm.
up the first storefront. So 2019, I invested. Didn't really do anything other than give money. Didn't even visit the store or anything. And then the store opened in 2020. At the end of 2020, I was running a solar company out of San Diego. And Crumble, again,
Mm.
just keeping my eye out for the market. Their top stores in San Diego, $3.6 million for a stupid cookie store. I'm like, dude, this is the market. Let's franchise it. Long story short, he's like, I don't want to franchise it anymore. Like, I'm done. I want to move back to Utah. I want to sell the business. So
Mm.
I bought it from him. No experience in food or franchising, but with the intent of franchising, building the team. And that was almost 4 years ago. So since then, we've opened up. I don't know. It took about a year to franchise. We sold 450 franchises in the first 2 years. Opened up about 100 units,
Wow.
and then brought on a management group, and they've been doing a great job. And then they actually fully acquired Dirty Dough just a few months ago. So I'm breathing again.
Okay. Wow. So it's been really hectic building the company like that for you.
Yeah, it was way too hectic is an understatement, but I like the word. Um, yeah, it's jumping into business that you've never done. Food, that's a
Mhm.
whole nother
Yeah. Yeah. You were
industry.
just in sales, I guess, before, right?
Yes, I was doing door-to-door sales, which led me up to my solar company, which was a lot of
Mhm.
door-to-door
Mhm.
sales and online.
Right.
But yeah, nothing to do with food. I
Mhm.
didn't even know what franchising was at all.
Yeah.
Um, but the
Mm.
same, business tactics and sales tactics apply. Um, because we were growing so fast and we sold so many franchises, now you have to support them all. But the way that franchising works, you're you're running your business off of royalties, which is a percentage of gross sales. So if you sell 450 units, that's great, but they're not open yet, right? It takes years to open up that many. So you're trying to
Mm.
survive off very limited funds. And I was also trying to vertically integrate everything because we make all of the cookies for the franchisees. That's kind of our pitch is we're the most simplistic food franchise concept. You can operate out of 500
Uh-huh.
square feet, one employee with an oven, right? Because we ship you the frozen pucks, you just put it in the oven, serve fresh cookies.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but during all of that, yes, very hectic. I raised $9 million in the last 2 years. Don't have any experience raising money, and it
Yeah.
was if you don't raise, you're going under, right? And it was
Mm.
like that every other month for the
Wow.
last 2 years. So hectic, yes, plus more.
So, I mean, it sounds like you were really focused on expansion the whole time and growth.
Yeah. Um, I mean, again, I try to stay at what I'm good at, and I like sales, the communication. Now I'm like moving more into the social media PR, which has been really, really good for us. And then I've hired out the ops. So right when we started, I got some really good advisors. Um, which I didn't know you can get advisors for a company that's worth nothing and losing money, but I did. You can get
Oh,
really
wow.
top tier people
Yeah.
for small percentages of
Mm.
equity, like a 0.5% to 1.5%. First guy I got was John Richards. His big
Mm.
hit early on was InfoSpace. It was a $31 billion company when it went public. It was bringing Yellow Pages online. So it's like, wow, business. That's a whole
Mm.
nother scale of business when I'm like looking at that compared to my little dinky solar company. So I get him on. I get Steve Hart on, who owns the largest property management franchise in the nation. Um, and then the third person I was trying to get for my advisor became my CEO. So kind of
Mm.
going back, yes, I focused on the growth and the expansion. I hired out the ops. The CEO that I hired, she's been in the game for 40 years. She started a company called Maui Wowie Smoothies and Coffee, grew it to 600 something open units
Mm.
before exiting.
So you went to people who had already done what you wanted to do to help you.
Yes. I mean, I think you could do anything's possible, right? If you know
Mm.
what to do. Um,
Yeah.
And then it's okay. Well, I don't know food franchising, and now I'm a food manufacturing company. I'm also a logistics company because I'm shipping cookies from
Mm.
Utah to Pennsylvania to Florida to California.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a big, I guess, a big undertaking. So finding the right people for the right spots, rather than me focusing on like, can I learn logistics and how all that works in trucks? Yes, but it's going to
Mm.
take me
Mm.
forever. And can I learn food manufacturing and franchising? Yes, but for the growth rate that we were on, it's like, no, I'm just going to focus on what I'm good at, which is sales, raising money, and the PR side, and then hire out the rest. And I think it worked. I think it worked
Mm.
rather than me trying to do both because
Yeah.
sometimes you get distracted. You have have you ever heard of the EOS management system? It's like
Sounds familiar.
anyways, it has terminology and like it's a management system. So you have
Mhm.
the visionary and then you have the integrator. That's their terminology. And you can't do both. Like the visionary is like, I'm coming up, somebody's coming up with ideas, but they're typically like ADHD, like myself, so like I'll come up with the idea, I'll start on it, I'll even do the first little part of the SOP, and then I get distracted, and then I get bored and then I move on to the next thing. So
Mm.
I learned to adapt with that. It's come up with the idea, start the project, and then plug somebody in to, I guess, oversee it, which would be the integrator. They're integrating your ideas.
Mm. Right. That kind of makes sense. I get it.
Yeah.
So, who did you go to at first for investors? And I mean, did you work a lot on your pitch, or how did that go on?
Yeah. So luckily I that John Richards guy that I mentioned, very experienced in capital raising, and he's
Mm.
invested in a lot of other companies as well. So it was kind of like, okay, raise capital. How? Who do you go
Yeah.
to? How do you do this legally? So that like the first round is
Mhm.
family and friends and fools. If you ask John, family, friends, and fools, right? Um, so if you know them personally, it's just like, hey, do you want to invest? Kind of here's the opportunity. How do you come up with the pitch? That's me bouncing ideas off of advisors and saying, hey, how do we do this? How do we do that? So
Mm.
we started getting in some money with friends and family, raised a few million there. And that was,
Mm.
texting. I mean, just hitting up any and everybody I can think of, but not saying, Karl, do you have money to invest? Like, Karl, do you want to listen to what I'm doing? We are raising money. I'd love to hear some feedback. And at the end, like, hey,
Mm.
Karl, is this something that you'd be interested? I mean, interested in, or someone else, right? And I think that or someone else is really key because if
Mm.
people
Yeah.
people don't like to tell other people no, right? So they know the call. It's like, no, this isn't a good fit for me because of XYZ. Okay, well, who do you know? They're very likely to give you those referrals.
Mm.
So it was really just piggybacking off of referrals. And then when you moved into the okay, I need to branch out further, then there's all sort of Reg D violations. It's filings. It's all regulated by the SEC. Still don't understand any of it. But now you're having to check if they're accredited investors and submitting financials and things like that before you can take their money. Um, so it started to get a little bit more complicated. And it was all from, yeah, just small, I mean, groups. It wasn't private equity. Private equity needs, depending on your corporate structure, they need it structured in a certain way, and we weren't structured that way. So it was
Mm.
really just friends and family. It's like, hey, if a private equity group wants to invest into Dirty Dough LLC, which is an S corp, they can't. It would break our S corp status. So it made it that much more difficult because then it's just getting $50,000 checks, $100,000 checks, $200,000 checks, rather than going to a big group and saying, hey, do you got 5 million that you want to invest?
Mhm.
So
Wow.
piecemealing it together.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that must take a lot of self assurance too to take money from people and know that you're going to deliver return on their investment, right? You have to have that responsibility and belief in what you're doing, I guess, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, once you take somebody else's money, it's a different ball game. At least for me,
Yeah.
it was. I'm like,
Right.
crap. When it's your company and you own everything, you're like, whatever. There's a lot of leeway if I want to take more time off or spend more money on this or take money out of the business, whatever. But when you have
Mhm.
investors, like, nope, we're going 100% growth mode.
Mhm.
Yeah, to really for me to show them like, hey, I'm working my hardest to get the return, which is scary because it's a business is very uncertain. But
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
far it's been paying off.
That's great. Awesome. So once you had the investment capital, then it was just a matter of scheduling out the production, or
Yeah, I
what
mean,
kind of the steps, if I may ask?
as far as like opening up the first so many stores.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the investment capital, it wasn't like a $9 million check that came in. Like I was saying, it was
Mm, mhm,
it was it was if you don't raise money, we're gonna run out of money next month, always, or 2 months or 3 months. We're never that far out. Um, so it wasn't like getting a big chunk in and making a big investment. It was, here's our expenses. How do we get by with just these things?
cover this month.
But yeah, most of the money that we spent was on the trying to vertically integrate the dough manufacturing facility. Now
Mm,
that I brought on this other management group, the first thing they did was redo all of that. I mean, not redo, like undo. They're like, no, we're not big enough. It doesn't make sense to have all of these machines and all this. So we sold them all to a co-packer. Now it's all being, delivered that way. But
mhm,
before we figured out that that was the best way to do it, and we had to figure out all the machines, that's where most of the money went, was kind of in the R&D aspect. Like, what
mm.
types of cookies do we want to do? What type of machines do we want to do? What other types of products? And then building the support team around it.
Oh, I see. Wow, interesting.
I mean, it's hard for the timing. So when I bought Dirty Dough, we franchised it December of 21, so 3 years ago.
Okay.
And the goal was for me to open up 30 stores in 5 years. So I get a warehouse, 8,000 square feet. This could probably handle 20, 30 stores. This is great, right? Well, right when we started franchising, before you'd even paid for the construction, I mean, like the build out of that 8,000 square foot facility, we'd already sold like 60 or 70 franchises. I was like, crap, now what do you do? Right.
Wow.
So then we moved into the next facility, which is 40,000 square feet, which can handle 20 to 30, or sorry, 200 to 300 stores. But that's going to take us years to build up. Meanwhile, I'm stuck with the $40,000 lease payment every single month. Right. So a lot of it was just, I'd never done it. And it was figuring it out. And then it makes it so much harder when it's like, hey,
Mm,
guys, we're opening up 50 stores this year. We're going from 7 to 60 stores. That's what we did last year. And it's like, okay, let's do let's do our best. I think we did a great job. Obviously, there's a million bumps along the way. Um, but really relying on Jill Summer Hayes, our CEO, and like, hey,
mm,
you've sold and opened up close to 1,000 franchises. Like, what did you do? Hey, Steve
mm,
Hart, same thing. The guy that ended up buying the
mm,
company, I actually got him. an outreach, just a cold outreach through LinkedIn. That was probably my number one. After I exhausted my friends and family network, LinkedIn was the number one spot to just find investors,
Mm,
connect with people, and
yeah,
then connected with this guy. I asked him to become an advisor. He was the former Jimmy John CEO. He
mm,
served as an advisor for about a year, then came on as CEO last year, or about a year ago, December, 12 months ago, and then he bought the company in September. So same thing. It was me trying to cold outreach in LinkedIn. He didn't
mm,
want to invest, but I got him on as advisor. And then as he got to know the company more, he became CEO and then ended up buying it. But it kind of all snowballs, right? Just action,
mm,
action,
yeah,
action, and then something's bound to happen.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. So what do your days look like then? How do you approach all this to not in order to not get overwhelmed and all?
I did just get overwhelmed at the beginning. Probably the first 6 months, the thought that went through my mind, I don't know, 50 to 100 times a day is, am I going to sell this company for several million or am I going to go bankrupt? Like
Oh,
there was
wow.
no in between. So how did I deal with that? I really dove into mental health mindset, particularly lasering in on, well, what's the issue? Like my body is having a physiological response as if
Mm,
I'm in danger. My nervous system is the problem.
right.
I'm in my sympathetic. I'm using my sympathetic nervous system, which is like the fight or flight, rather than the parasympathetic, which is rest or relaxation. So once I lasered in, I'm like, I think that's like I need to focus on the nervous system to calm the nervous system down. So I threw an ice bath in my garage, a sauna. I have like a
Mm.
full body red light. I have like this vibration thing.
Oh,
Some
nice.
other like little electrode. It's called the pulsetto device. I don't know.
Oh,
And it
yeah?
like this is where the um, right in your throat is where the vagus nerve has the most
Mm,
endings.
mm,
And
mhm,
if you stimulate the vagus nerve, that is your parasympathetic nervous system. So your rest and relaxation. And you can actually measure
mm,
it, which I measured on my ring and my watch, my HRV rate, heart rate variabilities, which is the number one indicator for like how rested and recovered you are, how low stress. So is
mm.
really diving into
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that was the only way, like really trying to get my body out of that fight or flight response
Mm.
through a ton of different methods.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had people helping you with that then? You had to hire help with that too?
Yeah, I mean, no, that was mainly Google and yeah,
Yeah,
was
right. Okay.
Google and
Yeah.
podcasts as far as like
Mhm.
what to buy and how to do all of that.
Okay. Okay.
But I do think it was absolutely essential and like coming out the other end of thinking, your body's going to die and then it doesn't die. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but
Right,
like
right.
I'm looking back, I'm like,
Feeling
okay,
stress.
all of that suffering was in my head, right? Like
Mm,
pain is part of life, but suffering is optional. Like I go to the gym, I experience pain,
yeah.
but I don't suffer from it. I like it. I like
Mm,
lifting heavy
mm,
weights. It feels good, even though it's painful, because the context around that. So now
mm,
I've really tried to adapt that mindset, or I guess just acknowledgement of suffering is optional. It's in your mind. It's just how you perceive the pain. So it's focusing a lot on, I guess, perception on like, is this suffering? Do I want to suffer? Because ultimately, nobody else decides if I suffer other than myself. So I got into a bunch of
mm,
like Eastern
mm,
philosophy,
mm.
yogi, guru books, and all of that. And I mean, I'm
Nice.
I'm extremely happy that I did. I feel like it changed my life.
That's awesome. That's great. You're
Yeah.
kinda your own personal success story at the same time.
Yeah, I think that is honestly the bigger success story, at least in my mind. If
Yeah.
it wasn't buying a
Mm,
company and, selling it for
interesting.
whatever it was, 100x, like what I bought it in just a few years, it was learning how to get through life. Like get through the hard parts of life when you're like,
Mhm.
okay, how would I feel if the company doesn't succeed and I have 200 employees that no longer have a paycheck? Like if you could get over that and like conceptualize that, whether you keep them on payroll or you don't keep them on payroll, but like accepting both outcomes and learning that process for me has been extremely beneficial. And,
Mm,
fast forward to today, like it's just so integrated, like all of those little techniques into my life to
mm,
keep rather than working 80 hours a week. I think if you're sharpening the saw, right? Focusing
yeah.
on your mood and energy levels and excitement, especially if you're in sales and raising capital. Like I could get on 100 calls, but if I'm just kind of dead, like, yeah,
Mm.
this is what we're doing. Do you want to raise? We're in this tough spot, right? Like all 100 of them are kind of going to be wasted. Or I could do 40 calls,
Yeah.
but be high energy, ask for referrals, make
Mhm.
jokes with them. And it just makes such a big difference. So that's what I'm,
Yeah. Mm.
if you look at my schedule, there's less work time and there's more all of that other stuff time, like sharpening the saw time.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's good. I like that. I think people say a lot that they learn more in the journey than they do, getting there,
Yep.
arriving there. The building of the business is worth more than having the business in the end.
Yeah, but at least this is my observation. That is totally true. Like the joy's in the journey, but during the journey, we typically just suffer, right? Because we're just
Yeah,
like, it doesn't matter
right.
if I'm suffering right now because it's
Mhm,
delayed gratification. I'm going to get once I sell the company, once I build it to this, and then you reach that, and you've
mhm,
also find that that's not
yeah,
fulfilling. So you missed the joy along the journey because you focused on the destination. Then you got to the destination and realized, oh shoot, it was already the entire process. I just missed it. Um,
mhm, mhm,
it's
yeah,
that the brain's ability to always tell us that success and happiness is just around the corner. If you just get that next thing, it's always
mm,
placing happiness and success externally. And if you place it externally, I mean, the external world is changing every second, right? And you
yeah,
can't control it.
mhm,
So focusing it internally, at least that's what I've seen. Like if you focus it internally, then that does allow you to focus on the process because you're focusing on who you're becoming and what you're learning. And then when you
yeah,
sell, I mean, it's the same thing. You're not focused on the outward things.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, totally, and if you're just doing it to get a thing to then it's like your high is always someone else's low. There's always
Mhm.
someone else who has more and has a bigger game. You're trying to get the luxury apartment and someone owns the condo. You're trying to
Yeah,
get the 3-foot yacht and someone already has the 30-foot yacht, and it just goes on and on and on. And I think that people that get stuck in that, never find fulfillment because there's always that that next thing that you're chasing. Whereas if you're just happy with what you have and where you are each day, then you're already where you want to be.
yeah. That reminds me that going back to the Buddhist or the Eastern philosophy,
Mm. Mhm.
Buddha um, has a quote like suffering is the root, sorry, desire is the root of all suffering. And
Mhm.
I think it's
Right.
very easy
Mhm.
to exchange the word desire with expectation, right? If you
Mhm.
expect something, it's a desired outcome. So you could say
Mhm.
expectation is the root of all
Yeah.
suffering. And then if you actually analyze that, it's like, yeah, my expectation was to sell the company for this amount and I didn't hit it, or I did. But either way, because of that expectation, it's going to set me up for a potential suffering. Whereas if you don't have the expectation of selling your company or being a
Mhm.
millionaire or whatever, then
Mhm.
it's, well, what is my expectation? My expectation now becomes on like, again, the person I want to become, who I am, but more than anything, like how do I feel on a day-to-day basis, right? What is my mood? What is my energy level? Because I think that's what we're all after, right? It's not the luxury apartment or the condo. It's how we think the luxury apartment or the condo will make us feel energetically, our
Right.
mood, right? Are we going to be happy?
Yeah.
Are we going to, and it's like, okay, well, how about we just forget about the apartment for a second, narrow into what you want to feel as a result from getting that apartment, and that's your goal. The goal
Mm.
isn't the apartment, and the
Yeah.
goal isn't $1 million, right? Then I could get the apartment.
Mhm.
The goal is I
Mhm.
want to feel happier. I want to feel more energetic, more um, social, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then trying to, I guess, fit your goals in line with that. But I do think that anytime that there's a goal, if it's based on, if it has anything to do external, right, a material item, you're falling short because
Mm.
the
Yeah.
external item, the house, the car, the money,
Mhm.
what do you want from it though? Like
Mhm.
emotionally, how do you want to feel? Because everything we do
Yeah.
is just to make us feel a certain way. So if we could
Mhm.
laser in on that, then set the goals. I think that's the much better way to do. I learned that 2, 3 years ago, where before it was like, no, it's just the money because the money makes me feel good. I already know that, but
Mhm.
it's like, no, I want to feel good, but define that a little bit more. And anyways, um,
Yeah.
I would challenge everybody to do that if you haven't. Like, what do you
Mhm.
want to feel on a day-to-day basis? That should be the number one life goal. And then
Mhm.
everything else
Right.
just falls underneath.
Yeah. Yeah, like, what are we willing to tolerate? I
Yeah.
think that's when people wanna make a change too, when they decide that they're not willing to tolerate something anymore,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
then
And
that's
you,
when they
you
do
come
it.
to like you hear a lot of people if they achieve some level of success, it's like, oh, it's not about the money. You hear that all the time, right? But like, and I heard of that all the time growing up. But for me to kind of start my journey, do like focusing on the emotional side, because for years I just said, I don't have emotion. Like I have very low emotion.
Mhm.
It's all intellect. It's all logic. And then when I sacrificed my life basically to build the solar company, and it was short. It was only, a year and a half from the time I started it. Oh, sorry, my camera went all out of focus.
There you
It was
go.
only a year and a half from the time I started it till the time I sold it. But in that year and a half, it was like head down work, you
Mm,
know, put family relationships aside, wife aside, health aside, let's just work. Because if I could
mhm,
achieve my goal, which was become a millionaire by the time of I was 30, then what? I don't know. I didn't define that, but
mm.
then what I
Yeah,
think was like then life's perfect. Right?
right.
You have $1 million before 30 and your life's perfect. Well, that's not the case. So sell the solar company, get that dopamine, that serotonin hit, feel amazing, and then you go back to your normal baseline energy levels,
Mm, mhm,
right? Or mood levels or whatever, like you return back to normal very quickly. Um, so I started seeing a therapist. I'm like, okay, well, what am I actually after? I know that the money didn't give me what I was after.
mm.
So back to what you had said, like, do you have to experience the success or the money to realize that it's empty, or can you go off of other people's experiences, right? And I don't know the answer to that
Mhm,
question. For stubborn people like me, it was like, no, I have to achieve it myself.
yeah.
I'm not going to believe anybody
Mm.
else.
Yeah, well, and I think, also what you're willing to tolerate goes for in business too, like, at selling a product, you can't get you can't be a perfectionist, but at the same time, your product is I it's defining of you and a piece of you, and so that must be hard to get around, right? I mean, did you go through a lot of cookie testing and late night cookie
I mean,
testing before
every
you were
week.
comfortable?
Every week we're still testing because we always release new cookies. But yes, that
Nice.
is a huge worry, and that was one of the biggest benefits, both for corporate me and the people buying the franchise. Is
Mm,
hey, how do you do quality control?
yeah.
Well, you can do the competitor's way. Again, go back to the crumble example. You can hire 30 to 50 teenagers and college kids, buy mixers, buy raw ingredients, 50-pound bags of flour, so you don't get, economies of scale on anything. Um, and hopefully, even though you're turning over some employees every 2 months and you're always retraining because that's just the nature of the beast, hopefully they do a good job, but it's just so hard. Where our pitch was, hey, you still have to put them in the oven, but the ovens are programmed, right? Same time, temperature, fan speed. All of the ovens are the exact same as well. We make the cookies at scale. So you get higher quality control and consistency when you're mixing 4,000 cookies rather than 60 cookies, right? Using professional bakers versus teenagers. So that was a big sales point, I guess. And also
Mm,
a lot of the competitors will still like crumble will still weigh it by hand and portion it by hand. Very time consuming, but more so inconsistent, right? It's like, no, our cookie pucks are 5.2 ounces every single time before the toppings. We'll ship them out to you and you just top them. So, um, yeah, the simplicity of it, I think was I guess a big factor in it.
yeah. Well, it sounds like it was very important for you, an important factor in business, I guess, right? For the competition and all?
Yes, especially when you come in without any experience. It's like,
Mm,
how do
mhm,
I make this business geared towards people maybe more like myself, you know,
Yeah.
business sells, but they don't know how to bake cookie and they don't know, when you should, uh, how to measure the flour to make sure that it's not packed, but there's also not air bubbles in it, right?
Mm,
Those
mhm,
little tiny
mhm,
things.
mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
don't worry about that. We have it. Run your business. We're focusing on the quality control and the simplicity of it.
Mm, nice. Yeah. I guess that's also a bit of how to franchise well, right? And
Yes.
how to sell your business as a unit to other people.
Yeah, I mean, what is the why would somebody buy a franchise? I want to start a business, but I don't want to take the risk of coming up with my own brand. Either I don't have the capital to do all of that because that obviously costs a lot of money to like, I'm going to go build the
Mm,
tech on the back end and then the marketing campaigns and the app and the website and all that. Or
right.
I could buy into a franchise system that's already done for me. I pay an upfront franchise fee and then an ongoing royalty, but I'm doing that to lower my risk to follow a system to make it
Mhm.
simpler. So what I took that, I was like, okay, well, if people looking at franchises are interested because of the simplicity, how about I just make it even that much more simple? So again, my
Right.
target audience, I know they're looking for simplicity.
Mm,
That's just the franchise
mhm.
system. So I went all into that. Like, how much simplicity and support can we provide? And I do think that that's the way to go.
Yeah, yeah. I like bake a cookie, huh? It's pretty
Yeah.
about as simple as you could get it, huh?
Yeah, I think we have stores in, 25 states right now, and every cookie, I mean, you
Wow.
can go into any state, any store, walk into the freezer, grab a cookie, any cookie, put it on a cookie sheet, throw it in the oven and press start. Like that's as
Mm,
simple as
and
because every
end up with
cookie
exactly
cooks
the
the
same
same time
cookie in each
temperature.
state, right?
What was that?
And end up with exactly the same cookie in
And
each
exact
state,
yes.
right?
Yes.
That's
So
great.
lot of advantages to that. There's a lot of disadvantages, which I had,
Mm,
of us having to build the facility, buy the machines, figure out which machines to do, what sizes, what flavors, and all that. But once you get all of that heavy lifting up done, which we did, and that's why we had to raise so much money for it, because it was a lot heavier than I thought.
mm.
That then
Yeah,
you get to, I guess, see the fruits of the labor thereafter.
right. Yeah. So you had to put together timelines for yourself through all this?
In
Or
what way?
or I guess you had your timelines for your team as far as trying to get, return for your investors.
Oh yeah. There was no timeline. I mean, raising capital, I, the way that I was taught, and I believe is the right way to, it's not like, hey, we're going to get your money back in 3 years or 5 years. It's, hey, we're a startup. There's a huge potential here, but we're a startup. You could lose everything.
Mm,
We're shooting for a 5 year play, right? It
mm.
could be
Yeah,
2 years before we sell. It could be 10. Don't really know. But it's like, do you bet in the team, the model, what we've done so far, rather than like, are you set on a certain return outcome? Because there's just no way in hell that anybody can tell you one way or another if you're getting anything.
right, right. Yeah. Well, if you were gonna start a similar company, what would you do differently now?
Go a million times slower. Like, it
Really?
was fun going fast, and I was on CNBC and Good Morning America and things like that. We were in
Mm,
a very
really?
controversial lawsuit that was fun. We had a lot of fun with, and it was exciting. But it's like, okay, for what? Can I
Mm,
have that excitement without all of the stress? And where did all the stress come from? Well, it's like, okay, well, now we've sold 60 franchises.
mm,
Now I need to build the support team to support those 60 franchises they open. And then now it's
mm,
100 and then 200. And you're always having to hire more and it's just keeping up, keeping up, keeping up, kind of building the runway as you're landing per se. So doing it
right,
again, start with a few stores,
mm,
really get into it. And I didn't get into Dirty Dough all the way really just because of time, as far as like I didn't go work weeks in the store, which I should have.
mm,
Or
okay,
I could have,
mm,
or I will be doing going forward, I guess. I guess I shouldn't. I shouldn't say that I should have, but the next one I want to learn it a lot more ins and outs and run it for a longer time. With Dirty Dough, it just went so quick
mm,
because we hit the market and just got lucky on timing. Crumble just sold all of their franchises, sold out. We were getting a lot of press and attention. We had a really simple concept. the news and the media and social media liked it. So it was just like, kind of strike while the iron's hot. Going forward though, I think slower growth, but talk to me in 5 years and I'm sure I'm sure I'm gonna tell myself I'm growing slow and then I just go fast because it's hard to not.
Now you've gotten used to it, huh? Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at you before you ask me, like, what am I doing now? So I sold the company to Craveworthy Brands. They have 16 or 17 portfolio companies. About 7 of them offer franchises. So I'm the director of sales for those brands,
Mm,
which is pretty
nice.
new. But again, talking about going fast or going slow, one of our franchisees also owns glow tanning, a tanning business,
Mm.
and I'm helping him sell franchises too. And then talking with another company, I'm like, man, I'm already going out. I'm like, man, is this like a franchise brokerage? It feels very similar to what I did with solar,
Wow.
as a solar brokerage. And I'm like,
Okay.
am I creating another company without even knowing I'm creating another company? I need to pause the brakes. It's only been 2 months since I've sold.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, what's it look like this year? What are you focused on? You're the franchise
This is the,
go-to guy now, or?
yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've had a quote unquote corporate job because I work for
Mm,
the company that bought us. Um,
okay.
Which has a lot of perks. Like, I mean, first time
Mm,
literally in my life, I'm like, when I have to go to a conference in Houston last month but I had to book it last second because I wasn't, the information, I just didn't know in time. So it's like, crap, flight to Houston should be $400. It's $1,000. I'm
mm.
like, dang it. And then I'm like, oh, I don't care. I mean, I don't care in the sense of like, this is a $200 million company, you know what I mean? And they're the
Right,
ones wanting
right.
me to go. So I like all of that aspect, and I like
Mm,
the support and not having all of the pressure, but I'm still getting used to like, wait, I have to report to somebody. I don't know if I like that.
mm, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this opportunity. The company that bought ours is a really, really cool company. I mentioned a little bit before, but he was the CEO of Jimmy John's. Jimmy John's has been the most successful food franchise in the last 30 years by measured by percentage growth.
Mm,
Like 3 decades in a row, they are number one. And he was with them from 20 something locations till they opened up their first 300, 700 sold. Like, he built the
mm.
foundation of that.
Wow.
Um, so he's using everything that he did to produce, the number one food franchise company in the world over the last 3 years, and then applying it to brands like Dirty Dough or Genghis Grill, these smaller brands. Because the problem with big brands is, you want a Subway or a Jimmy John's or whatever, like, you can't get good territories. They're all sold out and they've been sold out for decades, right? New
Mm,
brands, you have first pick. Like, you can have the hottest spot in Dallas, right? And we know that's a good market. You get first picks on that. But you're typically buying into a franchise system that only has a handful of open units. They've only been around for a few years. So it's like, do they know what they're doing? Where Graveworthy and what Greg Majewski's built is kind of the best of both worlds. Like, you get the support of a much larger company that's opened up 2,000 restaurants, across a dozen brands, but you still get the hand holding of the kind of the smaller uh, mom and pop, feel. Like, Bud
mm,
Long is one of our franchises, which only has 11 locations. So signing up to be a Bud Long or Wing It On franchisee, you meet the owners of Wing It On and they help you pick the site and all of that. So I like that opportunity because I think they're opening up the market even further to allow more first time entrepreneurs to come in, especially in the food space, which something I'm super passionate about because that be your own boss, is amazing, but it's very stressful. So if you could
mm.
get into a franchise system for at least your first go around, see what other people are doing, what other systems, and then maybe in a few years you want to start your own business. But I think starting off with a franchise is a good model, especially if it's very well backed, and they have
Yeah,
the experience on the team.
yeah. So people can, get a hold of you if they're interested in a franchise now?
Yeah. BennettMaxwell.com is my website, has links to my social media. I have a podcast, Deeper Than Dough. It's
Nice.
the emotional side in the entrepreneur's journey. So, more than money. And on social media, I'm posting a few times a day on all of this stuff, mindset and entrepreneurship, family, work-life balance, all of that. And then on their franchising as well, whether it's the glow tanning, or any of the amazing crave-worthy companies, it's all on there.
Great. Do you think you could franchise any company? I mean, have you worked with other people who wanted to franchise a business?
I've spoken with 50 people um,
Really?
that are franchising or want a franchise and just, hey, can I pick your
Wow.
brain? And I always jump on those calls because I
Mm,
did that to so many people and people helped me out. So
mm,
yeah, I still don't
great.
know enough about franchising. I mean,
Mm,
I've been a franchise for 3 years. 3 years ago this month is when he franchised. So, I still don't know that much. But
nice.
yeah, I'm very surprised, like, there's handyman franchises, right? It's like, "Wait, what? So you're
Mm,
buying a territory? How does that work?" And then there's, franchise that you can buy very low cost that's like mailers. So, like, it's a magazine franchise and you're selling the ads, you know?
mhm,
So, it's like,
mhm.
but if you do that, what are your upfront costs? You're not getting an office. You don't need employees. So I've
Yeah.
seen everything franchised. I mean, a
Right.
big array
Mhm.
of franchising of different companies that have franchised. So it seems to work in most industries. Yeah, if you have a
Mm,
company, I think franchising, if it's on the table, look into it. It's an amazing way to grow your brand and add value.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I think so. It seems like it. Um, so what else would you like to add to our discussion today, or do you have any additional ideas about business that you'd like to share?
Yeah, maybe I'll do more of a summary. I would
Okay.
say starting out a business, look up what an advisory board is and go get advisors. Offer people
Mm,
0.5% to 1.5% of equity in your company over a 2-year vesting period. And you can look up what that means, but basically it's, um, Karl, if you're my advisor, I'm going to give you 1% after, let's call it a year, you have another opportunity or you just stop responding to me. You get too busy, whatever. Because I set up a 2-year vesting period, every 6 months, you're locking in a quarter of your equity. So after 6 months, if you leave, it's like, cool, thank you. Keep 25%, but the other 0.75% comes back to me so I can hire somebody else with it. So I would look into hiring an advisory board and finding 3 to 5 really good advisors that are
mm,
well connected in the space. And the expectation is just answer your phone, give me roughly 1 hour a week of, hey, what do I do here? What do I do there? That's the first step. I build the advisory board.
mm,
Um,
okay.
I should say that's the second step. First step is like, what do you want? If
Mm,
it's a material goal, go deeper. Like if it's, I want to do this because I want money, go deeper. And if it's, I want to do this because I want money so I can feed the hungry, go deeper.
mm,
Why do you want to feed the hungry, right? What is the emotion? Everything we do is after an emotion. So you have to start with the end in mind of like, here's my business idea, and here's the what I'm trying to accomplish on the emotional side. So to give you example, my mission statement is to find joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness in myself and others. So I put despite life's dirtiness, for me, it speaks, don't wait to sell your solar company to have the joy and fulfillment. But that was my personal mission statement. Then I'm talking to my business coach. I'm like, hey, finally, I'm excited. I got it. I know that in this life, I'm after joy and fulfillment. Now, what do I do for my business? How do I develop a mission statement around my business? And he goes, you idiot. That is your business mission statement. Like your business is a vehicle for you to complete your mission. So I would start with
mm,
that. Like,
mm,
what are you trying to accomplish? And it has to be based on an emotion. Then I would go find some really good advisors
mm,
and tell every single person what you're doing. Nobody's going to steal your idea, but get feedback, ask for referrals, and just get out there and don't be scared of the no's, I guess. So those
yeah.
are my closing remarks. Amen.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I like to tell people at the end, when you walk with, purpose, you collide with destiny.
Like that. Walk with purpose,
So,
collide with destiny.
yeah. I feel like that rings true again
Oh,
and
for
again
sure.
for me.
That's awesome.
So, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Bennett. It's been great speaking with you and hearing about your thoughts on cookies and beyond. um, so we want to wish you good luck in the new year here coming up.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate it. Good luck to you as well.
yeah, thanks.
I'm hoping for a good one after a low year that at least the first 6 months I was in hell. I'm
Mm,
ready for
okay,
a,
right.
di- an uptick, I guess, for next year. So
Yeah,
yeah, Carl, I appreciate you having me on the
great.
show. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks. Really appreciate it, Bennett. Um, have a great week.
Thank you. I'm sticking on to, I have to stick